I said 6 months, I was referring to a gentleman that was in Ireland. And some of these European countries, we hear that story over and over again. I had Peggy White, who was at the Lions Club, former Lions Club president today, tell me that a cousin of theirs that lived in Scotland, a family relative, died before that they could get the appropriate treatment. And Medicaid, is a program that does help our indigent folks. SCHIP is another program that does that. We have raised, and part of the recent legislation that they've been raising the income limits a little bit to try to do that. Maybe we need to look at some other ways to transition people in Medicaid to where there's a co-pay or a co-share of that cost. I think we need to look at those options. Now, I will tell you about agriculture. The problem that we have with agriculture is there's not a level playing field for American agriculture. These other countries around the world are subsidizing their commodities at a much greater rate than American agriculture. Every farmer that I talk to would like to eliminate these programs, but we can't eliminate them and let the agriculture go away in America as long as the playing field is not level. And so that's the reason that I have been a strong advocate of looking at ways to increase the exports of American agriculture and also making sure that these other countries quit putting high tariffs on American goods so that the playing field can be level. But what the problem is these countries know that the innovation and technology of American farmers is so superior to them that the only way that they can control that is to put high tariffs and embargo and keep our products from going in their countries. We're already dependent on other countries to furnish our energy every day. We have to pay other people to do that. If we let American agriculture die in here, then we're going to have to get up and buy energy and food from other countries. I'm not willing to do that right now.
Representing your district. Not many congressmen want to do that, I'm afraid. But as you look at the news reports, you look at the political climate and everything, there are a lot of Americans out there that have a deep concern about what's going on in Washington. Some of them are frightened, maybe even scared, and they want to do something. They're ready to speak up for what they believe. So I was just asking if you had any suggestions that just regular Americans, what they could do to stand up to the liberal, or dare I say socialist agenda that's coming out of the federal government.
That is a very good question. When I look at this room, and I don't know, I think there may be close to 900 to 1,000 people in this room, and we're seeing this all across America. You know, what we need to do is mobilize all of America. Now, the good news for the people in the 19th Congressional District is I get it, and my voting record supports that. But what we've got to do is look at these members of Congress in other districts across the country. And we may have to mobilize and go help get good conservative members of Congress in other parts of the state, because I can't do this alone. And I don't really care whether they're Democratic or Republican or Libertarian. I want some good, strong conservatives that will stand strong and take votes that are good for the American
people. We're up to 4:30. I want the congressman to try to get to everybody in line that's in line right now. But if you could keep your comments brief and keep it to one question so we can get to all these, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
And for those of you, I know some of you are leaving and have other things to do, please sure and take those forms with you. If you didn't have a chance to fill them out, fax them. If you did fill them out as you leave, there are tables out there, and if you would put those forms on there, we would deeply appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Yes, Congressman, I have a brief comment and a question, but before I do so, I wanted to address the pre-existing comments that we heard. I have a pre-existing condition, but I'm willing to wait and hope I luck out and don't have to face it, but I'm willing to wait to make sure that the fabric of our nation is not destroyed just so I can get it. I voted Republican in the last election, but I'm not here today as a Republican or a conservative or anything like that. I'm here as someone who has a modicum of common sense. All the arguments, all the speeches, I'm done with them. I pay close attention to what's going on, but to me, the very thought that a 1,000-page bill can be rammed down somebody's throat with no opportunity for the other side to have an input, and then 300 additional pages dumped in the night before, there's no more argument necessary. There's no negotiation. My question is, what are you going to do, and what can we do to ensure that every single Republican candidate that's in office today will stand up to this atrocity and vote it down?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. One, I'm going to keep voting against these kinds of programs. Secondly, I'm going to encourage my colleagues that are on the fence to say no, to stand up and say no to Nancy Pelosi and yes to the American people.
Thank you for being here today. I appreciate your service to the country. As an Air Force vet and an unemployed woman, I'd like to ask you a question about health care that I have not heard anybody address yet. I don't know if you're aware, something like 70% of the people who've gone broke as a result of medical debt already had insurance when they contracted those debts. There was a bill called HR 676 that was a 30-page bill that I believe was also introduced in the previous session of the House and was being discussed by your colleague, Representative Weiner, on the last day before the recess as an amendment by substitution for all of this mess. My question is, would you support that bill if a Congressional Budget Office scoring of it showed that it would provide significant savings not only to the government but to the American people and would stop some of the bankruptcies and the other undue burdens on our providers, our clinicians, and our patients in this country?
Well, you know what? I'm open to I want to look at every bill. I am not familiar. There was a lot of bills. Everybody was trying to kind of cover themselves. I'm going to use that word politely before they went home, so they could say, "Oh yeah, I've got a bill." So we will look at that bill. That's what makes America great. You know, if we did start getting all of these ideas and we quit worrying about getting it done fast and getting it up on the board, and we started taking all of these ideas, because there's some very thoughtful, intelligent people in the United States Congress, if the leadership would just let them do their own thinking. And so I want to look at that bill. I promise you I will do that. If you will get Kathy's card here, we'll get back to you after we look at it when we get back home.
I promise you that I will send you an email and I will also mail you a hard copy.
Good, thank you very much. Good, I'm very good, thank you.
Okay, basically number one, I just wanted to make 3 real quick comments and then I'll get out of here and let you say a piece. Number one, I'm 24. I personally see the number one biggest problem in America is our current tax code.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's 67,000 plus pages long. That is just astronomical. I don't know how long that takes to count to 67,000. Really, I can see there being only 2 taxes that would work really well for America: a flat tax or the fair tax. Obviously, the local state sales tax. Number 2, with healthcare, I know that a lot of people have a big spiel about that, but some of the biggest problems with our current healthcare, and I'm not for socialist medicine at all, but one of the biggest problems is lawsuits. You have people just suing, just this thing. I'm sorry, but $20 million would not bring my grandparent back. That's just point blank. Number 2, with the illegal immigrants, I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous, and I know you agree with me. Number 3 is something local with Lubbock just had the alcohol sales vote, and I'm really getting stressed out about all of the stupid lawsuit cases that are coming up trying to delay the alcohol actually coming to the shelves. We voted, we won it, we need to actually get it going.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to summarize there because, one of the principles that I failed to mention is another thing we can do for American families is put them on a level playing field tax-wise with the companies that are providing health care. Today, we penalize a family that doesn't have an employer that is providing health care for them. We tax them in a different way than we tax these employers. That's unacceptable. We can do that right away. And you're exactly right. It just goes back to the tax code today penalizes good behavior and rewards bad behavior. And one of the things to do today is we tax people when they're saving. One of the things we want people to do, and so they aren't dependent on the government, is encourage them to save. But today we penalize them to save. The fair tax, the flat tax are certainly things that I embrace. I just want to give you one quick statistic. The IRS just came out today, 1% of the American taxpayers pay 40% of the taxes. 5% now pay 60% of the taxes. And the top 10% pay 70% of the taxes. The top 50% are paying 98% of the taxes. We have an unequal distribution of, being an American is an honor and a privilege, and for us to begin to take people off of being a part of the American system is unacceptable. But we have a tax code that's antiquated. It picks its winners and losers, and we gotta fix it. Yes, sir.
I'm one of those radical constructionists. I'm also a Vietnam vet.
Thank you for
uninsured. Because there is no insurance that will cover alternative health care. And alternative health care has saved my life. Back to the constructionist thing. My only comment and question, I guess, at the end is during the Iraq conflict to try to look for a constitution, one of the emails that went around that was meant in fun, I guess, but it was too serious to be funny. It said, why don't we give them ours? We're not using it anymore. And we're not, Congressman. For the last 140 years, the legislation coming out of Washington, D.C. has taken states' rights and individual rights and put them all into the federal government. And it's only going to get worse in the next 3.5 years. That a conservative member of Congress can threaten Democratic leadership or whatever leadership happens to be, it's both parties that have done it, and say, if you pull stuff like this again, we're going to take you to court. Find a justification in the Constitution to pass a health care bill or a cap and trade or any of this other nonsense that's coming down the way.
Well, I think the way to do it, and it's being done, when you go back and look at the last 2 election cycles, Republican and Democrat, the squishy folks got sent home. And I believe in 2010, they're going to get a lot more of them sent home.
I've been in contact by email with you or your staff, and you've been very responsive, and I really appreciate that. Over the high cost of medication to treat multiple sclerosis. My question is, what is the plan to motivate insurance companies to provide insurance for those working poor and who are at a strong risk of being rejected and uninsured?
Yeah, you know what, I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble for this. But I just learned the other day that I think that the pharmaceutical industry is going to spend $140 million advertising to get you to buy into this flawed plan, when I think they ought to spend that $140 million helping people have more affordable drugs. You know, and not all pharmaceuticals are necessary, and so maybe one of the things the American people ought to be doing is saying, you know what, if that's why you're going to spend my money, I may do something else. So anyway, I'm sure I'll get in trouble for that. That's okay, but you're exactly right. And one of the things that's important, a part of and that's the reason I want to talk about health rather than insurance. What I want to talk about is making sure that we're doing research that in America is on the cutting edge of a lot of research to make sure that we look for cures and ways to minimize and increase the quality of life of the American people. And as this gentleman said a while ago about alternative medicines, what we're learning is that some of these alternative medicines can make a difference. And so if they'll work, let's reward what's working and not keep rewarding people that are providing things that don't work for us. So thank you very much for your comments. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Randy. Not about glad to meet you. I read this that 2,000 mandates are on insurance plans that add 20 to 50% to the cost of insurance. If we could get rid of those mandates, most people could afford insurance.
Exactly. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we need to explore before we just chuck this out the window. You know, we have the technology to process claims more efficiently, but we're not doing it. We have the technology to allow people to shop more effectively for their coverage, and we need to work on it. Yeah.
We should be allowed to buy insurance across state lines.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just say amen to that. I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
And lower the tort reform. Someone's already said
yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Unfortunately, we're going to take about 4 more questions, but what the congressman will do is stay after briefly to try to address any of those, but also remember there are several staff members here, myself included, that would love to take anything that you have. We're going to go with 4 more questions, and then we'll wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy, I want to know what possesses the people of Washington to call those of us who are against this health care plan brown shirts, Nazis, that we are organized by a community. When we, the Democratic Party here, from what I understand, sent out talking points for the people to come out here. I didn't get any talking points. I didn't need them. I didn't think for myself. I didn't read for myself. They talk about us being community organized. Excuse me, the President of the United States is a community organized.
Well, I tell you, what you're paying as a penalty is, go ahead,
I just want to say, I believe that the Congress, the President, and the military are to defend and protect us from enemies foreign and domestic. And right now, I believe that we equally have domestic enemies versus foreign.
Going back to the czars issue, we have some people actually in the White House, czars and advisors right now, who they have written about the, quote, quality of life years left issue, that at least half the people in this room would be denied health care because they do not have any quality life years left in them. As far as the czars go, where exactly does their funding come from? And the funding for them, staff, and exactly what is the constitutionality for the czars? And other presidents have had czars, but we now have over 3 times as many czars in the White House as all of the presidents behind.
Well, you make a good point, and I think what's going to probably happen is that as we kind of watch this unfold, I think all of us were like, well, first there was one or two, and then all of a sudden we started rapid firing, and we were in a czar mania. And so I think one of the things we have to do is begin to see where they're funding that, and look at appropriation bills in the future, and just take one of the ways we can't make the president fire them necessarily, but we can work to take their funding away. And then if they want to hang around for free, then that's a different deal. But I don't want my tax dollars.
That money has to have come from somewhere.
Well, and what I think I need to get a better answer for you. That I don't know if they're taking it out of their administrative budget or if they're taking it out of the agencies that they're making czar over.
Taking it to the taxpayers.
Well, they are. Yeah, we know where the real money is. And so I'll find out, and we'll run a piece of that in Randy's Roundup. And before we close, I want to remind folks about Randy's Roundup. I don't know how many people are getting Randy's Roundup. I've had a number of you say that. The best way for me to communicate for you right now, because things are happening so rapidly, is to go to randy.house.gov. Now notice I gave you a break and didn't say randynaugabauer.house.gov. So surely you can spell Randy, but it's randy.house.gov, and on the very front of that website is a way to sign up for Randy's Roundup, and that's a weekly, every Monday we send out a kind of a publication of what's going on. Or you can call 888-763-1611, or there is sign up for Randy's Roundup outside here. But I promise you this: we will try to get somebody to trace back where those, what counts they're funding those out of, and we'll get that information. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, thank you for being here. My question is, why is it okay to take money out of my pocket in the form of taxes to give to someone else to have a card, this cash for clunkers? Now, the latest I've heard is that they're going to offer rebates for refrigerators. They can trade in less refrigerators. What can we do to stop this the next rebate? It's getting ridiculous.
Well, that's the reason I voted against every one of those, is because, again, it's picking winners and losers. And I think about all of the other businesses around the country that are having trouble moving their inventory, and they didn't get the same kind of thing. And so, if you bought a car before Cash for Clunkers, you missed out on it. If you buy a car after Cash for Clunkers, you missed out. And where do we start having other citizens that pay for their own cars start making down payments on other people's cars? But what I am also concerned about is, stopping this paradigm where we think that every time somebody gets in trouble, if the airline industry gets in trouble or some other groups in trouble, people start relying on the government to do it. The government can't do it. We're borrowing every cent of the money that's going out right now to do this, and then we're going to ask our grandchildren to pay it back. It's unacceptable. Yes, sir.
My name is John Hopgood, and I work for the Life Science Center for Food and Living. And every day, I have people come in my office that have approved for disability, SSDI, and they do not have Medicare. They're going to have a 2-year gap from the time you get disability to the time you get Medicare. Is there anything in the legislation going around to get rid of that gap?
That's a very good point, and I think that is something down the road that we need to look at, is that if somebody has gotten into the financial condition that they need that kind of benefit, and we've had, I think, a case that we worked where someone had to wait an extended period of time. I think possibly we need to look at a way to do that in a way that's appropriate and makes sense. And so I don't know if anybody's offered any legislation for that right now. I think Kathy is nodding that there may be a bill to. Yeah.
Another question, real quick. One more question about the community health centers, the local ones. Every time I try to get one of my consumers a appointment with them, it's a 2-month waiting list.
Yeah.
So that's not
good. No. Yeah. We'll check on that, because, we need to make sure. I'll tell you what happens is, certain times of the year they get overwhelmed. There's flu and stuff like that, and so I'm not defending them. They'll give you that. But thanks for bringing that to attention. Last question.
Thank you for what you do. Tort reform has been mentioned here, but I never hear it mentioned in Washington. President Obama won't touch it. But aside from that, I'd like to know who or what writes these bills. We have suddenly coming out of nowhere a 1,000-page bill on health care, a 1,000-page or more bill on the bailout, with ambiguous language, verbiage that few people can understand apparently. I think it's written that way so that it can be interpreted any way you want to. But at any rate, what's this Apollo group got to do with it? President Obama, on another subject, has said numerous times that the cost of a government option would be, and all the rest of the costs associated with this, would be budget neutral. I don't know what magic he can perform with numbers, but one of the things that he mentions is $280 billion from insurance companies from Advantage plans. Does that mean that we will not be able to keep the health care we got if we like it? Because it looks to me like a lot of people will be out of luck.
Well, and that's another issue that, again, as I said, they're taking money out of Medicare, and of course one of the programs that they're talking about taking money out of is Medicare Advantage, which particularly in rural parts of the country is a very important program. It helps a lot of seniors. It's really interesting, a disproportionate number of African American senior citizens use Medicare Advantage. And so that's the reason that we've got to slow this process down. And I'll tell you, I was an accounting major. And when I started going through this, you know, it was extremely difficult because not only, this is just the written part, but it refers to other parts of the code. And so if you had the other parts of the code that it's amending, it would be probably 3 times this. And that's the problem here is we put this together. No, I guarantee you some of the people that are sponsors of this bill don't understand the bill. And you know what, when you start changing Americans' lives, you need to understand what you're changing and how it's going to impact the consequences. And what I believe in this bill is there's lots of unintended consequences. Well, I am very sorry that time constraints are going to have us call this to a close, but I'm going to come down to the front. I'm going to come down to the front and try to visit with a few of you before we have to leave. But what I do want to reiterate is a couple of things. We have a form that if you did get a chance to ask a question, we want you to fill that out. I want to take those your comments and questions back to Washington, D.C. I think I'm going to Xerox them and send them over to the President of the United States with a cover letter and say, listen to the American people. But before I close, I just want to say this. It is an honor and it is a privilege to represent you in the United States Congress. Every day when I walk across into our nation's capital, the symbol of freedom and democracy known around the world, and see that flag that so many brave men and women have given their life for, so that you and I had this opportunity today to have this meeting. I do not take that lightly. And I just want you to know that every fiber that I have is about making sure that every day I get up and represent the people of the 19th Congressional District, but also represent the people of the United States of America. And so God bless you. May God bless the United States.